Namaste and welcome to Youth TV Show. In today's episode of US-Asia Futuristic Talk series, we have with us Mr. FISHMAN from George Washington University. He will be speaking on the topic, what does sustainable development really mean to rural Asian village? May I request the chairperson of today's program, Mr. Navaraj Silwal, Deputy Inspector General of Nepal Police, to open up this session.
I'd like to welcome Professor Ram.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to request you to say something about yourself.
Sure. Well, the one thing I want to say after your very kind introduction is that even though I carry the formal title of a professor, assistant professor, the truth is that I'm a student. I'm spending my time running around the world. A lot of it is around rural Asia, trying to study and understand what this concept of sustainable development can actually mean in practice.
So tell us something about how the teachings that you deliver to your students, how that can actually be brought about in changing the lives of the people.
The first way, when I'm in the classroom, instead of delivering lectures, I try to push the students to turn the class into actual lab. The university has a sustainability office where they try to make the campus more sustainable. I told them we're going to team up with them and we're going to do experiments trying different ways to influence their behavior.
Wow.
And evaluating that. So we're going to do very, very applied research. It's going to be at the service of the people in the university whose job it is to make the campus more sustainable. Real life, the world is very messy. It's not structured.
Right.
So you can get a very structured experience here in college and go out in the world and you'll have to deal with it at some point. So why not start now? Why not make this? So that's one way in which I'm trying to do that in the classroom. I remember at some point I complained to my mentors, who is a famous economist, Jeff Sachs, and I told him that all this academic stuff is just nonsense. It's useless. You know, I want to be one of those people who actually do something practical. Right. So he made the point that there's tremendous amount of need for some analysis to incorporate, to complement the efforts that people of action are doing in order to improve policy and better understand these very complicated challenges we are facing. Much of the efforts people are making are often driven by ideology rather than by evidence.
No.
So I basically see my job as being at the service of those people who do really good work.
The prosperity that Americans, Westerners have built together, we have also had the largest share in their prosperity. And does this Westerner world have this realization? Do you think so?
I think increasingly people realize the responsibility of the Western process of industrialization, the impacts that is having on the rest of the world. Right. Unfortunately, like for example, in the United States, where I work, there are still shockingly large numbers of people who prefer to deny that any of this is actually happening. I cannot believe anybody is genuinely denying that. I think it's just a way to avoid dealing with the responsibility that comes with that. But hopefully that's going away. I think the younger generation is not willing to accept any of these ridiculous ideas and their denial, and hopefully that is going away. There's this idea of like, what does the process of material development mean for the rural populations, for rural economy? And the fact is that in the history of economic development in the West, mostly that process is accompanied by a rapid shift of the population from rural areas to cities. If you go to the so-called Western countries, you'll find a very, very small proportion of the population still residing in rural areas. Most economists probably expect that expect that as a part of economic development here in South Asia, there'll be a continuous and more people will move to cities. And they see that as a very essential and welcome part of the process of increasing material prosperity.
Material kind of prosperity is not something that development means today. You probably having a lot of material use, building or beautiful car, Ferrari or whatever, good bank accounts, but you're still unhappy. Does it mean development?
So That's exactly. I think there is a tension between, I was describing the traditional economic view of what development entails.
Yeah.
And then basically it's focused on material prosperity, and part of that is this urbanization. It seems that a lot of policymakers and governments actually are making efforts to slow down the process of urbanization. They see it as a negative process. And the other part of that is, you mentioned that material prosperity may not bring the real satisfaction, the real happiness. And that is also an issue that maybe 20 years ago this perspective was basically ridiculed by most economists as being a very impractical or romantic idea. But there's been a change, at least in the fact that economists are paying more attention. There is like a whole subfield in economics now that is trying to understand what makes people express satisfaction with their lives. There is something which we can call happiness, or that maybe gets degraded in some part of the development process. And I think especially when you get to higher levels of income and material consumption, there is some evidence and also debate of whether that continues to increase people's subjective satisfaction or not. Okay. And then in terms of migration, having somebody migrate and generate more promise for the future in a city or in another country, maybe that gives some level of satisfaction. Now, I'm not suggesting that the only barometer of how people are doing is what they say, how well they are saying they're doing. But just gives you a little bit of a flavor, since you raised that aspect. But I think that's a very fascinating and interesting point.
No, this is actually basically connected with the perception of the people. Doing something is better, not doing something, or doing this is better, doing this is less better. Kind of notion is hurting it. And that's where you find different ideology. And that's what makes people feel unhappy with the job they get. So that's where the education element needs to be brought.
So let me take from that point, building up on that. So let's for a minute move away from this idea of migration as a way to achieve economic development. Even if we just focus on achieving, a livelihood or in a rural context, which is often mostly agriculturally dependent, then here is where the environmental changes are coming into the picture, right? Because it is already becoming, in some ways, increasingly difficult to cultivate. That is another element that's getting thrown into this mix of challenges that sustainability in a rural context is facing. So we have this tension now of, should we base agricultural growth, which would mean better food security and increases in income, on the existing technologies that have been able to raise yields by using more water, more energy, more fertilizers, more pesticides. But this is also where we do have a body of technology and more of that can enable the cultivation of crops with less of these resources. But a lot of the challenge is about how to introduce those technologies in the low-income rural Asian context. In this context of improved technologies, how the challenge of making those technologies relevant, available, affordable, usable by farmers here in rural Asia, I think that's the key to achieving, in practical ways, sustainability in the rural context here.
Thank you so much. We've had enough discussions, and then I think we'd like to have some experience from the forum also.
I wanted to add and share about this program that we have that is sharing the knowledge, and a little bit about the challenges ahead with this program. So throughout the past 2 years, the embassy here in Nepal has been sending, last year we have 500 students or trainees from different districts of Nepal going to Israel, small farmers going to Israel and learning about different kinds of technological advances or research, different kinds of research, and also implementing those technologies in the fields in Israel. We call it Learn and Earn program, so they can come back to Nepal and hopefully go back to their communities and embed their societies there. And it's been a very, very successful program here in Nepal, and we're very happy about it.
So our mission now is to ensure with the Nepali government together that there is a framework for everyone to work together to betterment Nepal as a whole and to kind of direct everything together. So this is just what I wanted to share about this subject.
I think this is a fantastic idea, actually, because it seems there's an amazing opportunity here to use these trainees as a catalyst for change. And now it's time for us to learn from them.
Exactly.
We need to learn from them through interacting and through monitoring them. What are the challenges that they are facing in bringing that knowledge and implementing it in the complex economic, socioeconomic reality that is very different from where they have learned to apply those technologies?
Right.
What are the barriers that they're facing now? And by learning from them, that's a way to design policy that can help them overcome those challenges. So I think that this is a wonderful direction to take, and research can support that also maybe in some ways. So we're at your service to try and support that in any way we can.
Yeah, we must thank the government of Israel and the people because that is how we can make this world a better place to live in. We share knowledge with other people, try to help them, and that's how you grow.
Thank you both for your invigorating and inspiring discussion. Your point about education and knowledge is, I think, the key to this whole debate. I feel the government has a responsibility here to start this education, this awareness, this whole value for the environment when they start school.
Right.
So when they walk down the street, they know not to litter. They start, I say to the students, you can't blame the government for not littering.
No.
Who is it that throws the rubbish on the street? Not the government, it's every individual. And also my question would be, how do you help people have respect for land? Generally, for the land generally. Like, for example, you see so many places in the world where they're destroying the land. Even the farmers are destroying their own land by using the chemicals, the fertilizer. And one thing I would say is that to encourage the Nepal as a whole to hold on to their own land. Never sell land to foreign investment, because the moment you've sold out your country, you'll never get it back again.
No.
This is where I'm trying to help people understand that they've already got the wealth here. They own their own land. Sustainability, they've already got it. It's already there in the fact that they own their own land.
I actually want to make the point that the educational failure, I think, is in my country. I didn't get any education about the nature of the global environment. Often I find something that I get very upset about when people say, oh, these people should stay in the villages, it's in a very idyllic life. But none of us would be willing to live in that reality. It's not for us to make the choices. I think what I would like to see is a situation where every individual can make their own choices, whether it be to move to Kathmandu or stay in the village, as long as those choices are not constrained by external circumstances that force them to make and are not really their own free choices. So that's the only twist maybe that I would like to add to that point.
In our country, everybody wants to have a master's degree and then PhD and like this certificate. Those who have a master's degree have absolute no idea what they can do with that. I think that will be a challenge, dignifying the profession. Not everybody has to have a master's degree, not everybody has to have a PhD, but there's a vocational sector that lacks here. That's one perspective. My question is, how do you bring clarity in the society through education from early age, those differences between mastery goal, social goal, and how do we define this contentment in the society?
There's a whole other aspect of our challenge which is not in the material domain. Certainly I think in terms of values, in terms of meaningfulness, in terms of finding happiness. This is where we have an equally large challenge, especially I would say in the industrialized societies. Obviously the materialistic alone is failing to satisfy some of our deepest needs, and that's where we are just in the dark. And actually that's where I think the West, speaking metaphorically, has tremendous amounts to learn from the East.
We already know that the Nepal is more dependent in the agriculture. How we can achieve the sustainable development in the agriculture? especially there is a lot of the issue and how we can minimize that type of the issue to take the sustainable development in the agriculture.
In fact, I think hardly anybody knows how to do it. How will we know? How will we learn? It's through people like you that will know. You have to give us the answer. You are the ones trying out things in the real conditions in the field. It's important to have applied research to help learn from your experiences in a systematic way so that those tools can help us learn from your experiences in a way that can be applicable beyond two VDCs or one district, but on a large scale. So we need to draw the essential lessons from your work in a way that's very generalizable.
You have a lot of prospect. You can lead this campaign actually. You start with 2 districts and let other people come and see it. You set an example for others to follow. You lead them. You become a leader and we'll follow you.
I think there is lack of coordination amongst all the activities of all the different initiatives. That's one thing. I feel like there should be like, the Marshall Plan after World War II, the US had a Marshall Plan how to rebuild Europe. Why don't we have a Marshall Plan for agriculture in Nepal or a Marshall Plan for agriculture in Asia? I mean, this is a global challenge, whatever happens to agriculture here is my problem. It's no longer only your problem. No. Farmers, I don't know Nepal so well, but I'll tell you in India, they don't have access to information. How are they supposed to know how much pesticide they should apply? And so there are a lot of these things that we as the public sector are not providing them, and which makes it impossible for them to know. The risk they are facing when it comes time to choose how much pesticide to apply. I have the choice of maybe reducing it a little bit because I know it's affecting my health. But if I don't know how much yield loss is going to be resulting from that, I can't afford to take that risk. I can't afford to.
Maybe in the schools, to be more practical, as we grew, we only talked about mathematics and English. Those were the compulsory classes. Maybe we should have environmental sustainability as one of the compulsory classes from elementary level. That is a huge policy decision, I think, both from the government. And the parents themselves have to be involved with the kids' education. It's not only the kids' responsibility. I've learned myself over the years.
But I want to see the sustainability curriculum implemented in my country first before it comes to Nepal. It's a greater priority. I'll tell you why. No, I'll tell you why. Because you know who are the people who are messing up the global environment? It's not the Nepalis. It's not the Indians. It's the Americans and the Europeans and the Israelis. That's the people who are making the glaciers here melt. So it's the Western children who need to get that education in the school first. I would say, let people here study mathematics and English and teach the Westerners some environment.
There's a theory. If you want to give somebody a fish, do not just go to the market, buy a kilo of fish and give it to them. If you give them the fishing rod, they will start to fish. They learn to fish. They will learn to live. That is what is lacking, because in Karnali region, the government people they've started giving them the taste of rice. Rice is not produced there, so people thought it's a luxury to have a rice in that. With rice is not produced there. Something that you don't know is more valuable to you, right? Mm. So the rice doesn't have much the vitamins and minerals that you can probably have in millet, which is widely produced in that region. So people wanted to, go behind procuring a rice. So the government and NGOs and whoever are involved in actually, supporting agriculture system in that region did not focus much on the local ingredient products. So we need to actually, convince them or teach them, or kind of, provide them the technologies and support. We like to bring it to the attention of the audiences also, and the policymakers who are probably watching our program, that you guys do the right thing. Give them the fishing rod, not the fish. Nepal has a lot of potential, a lot of prospect, but we have so much. We have large room to maneuver. And then we need to bring in more youths back home. Thank you so much for coming over and giving your insight, sharing with us your knowledge.
Thank you for your insight.
And and I'd like to thank Youth Asia also for giving me this opportunity to share some of my ideas and discuss with you. And then I'm sure millions of viewers who are watching us today will also have some benefit from this discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining.
I believe this discussion was enlightening to you. We will be organizing US Asia Futuristic Talk series with new topics regularly. You can follow us at facebook.com/todaysyouth Asia. Thank you for watching.